Welcome to Pause for Peace with me, Pastor Jule. And welcome to this beautiful podcast studio that has been created by Hillwood Presbyterian Church, not only to offer this podcast each week to you, but also to have an opportunity to offer a podcast studio, a digital recording space right here on the west side of Nashville to those who are looking for a place to call home. Check out our website to find out details coming soon about how to be a part of recording right here. Meanwhile, I have been just beginning a class, a digital class that I was excited to sign up for because for so many years, I've been wanting to know more about the work of Saint Teresa of Avila. And in her beautiful book, The Interior Castle, Teresa of Avila gives this spiritual formative experience, which she wrote for her sisters when she was living in a monastic community in Spain in the 16th century. Teresa of Avila was a fiery Spanish mystic. She was somebody who had this passionate relationship with the divine, with God. And I'm excited to be a part of this digital class brought through the Center for Action and Contemplation by James Finley, and also Myra Star is involved a little bit in this class. And it was several years ago that I became familiar with Myra Star's little book on Teresa of Avila called Passionate Mystic. Myra Star is somebody who has translated many of the mystics from their original language, and for Myra, translating Teresa of Avila's work from Spanish, 16th century Spanish, into English and making the work more accessible to those of us who want to dive into this way of being about spiritual formation that Teresa of Avila was teaching to her sisters and to others, and herself was practicing. Now, I'm just beginning to learn more about the Interior Castle, though for years I have read portions of it and learned about it and heard the connections of these 7 rooms in the castle that we have to move through on our way to the most interior place. And in that metaphor of the castle for what's happening within us, within our being, within our soul, and the metaphor for the castle, we move closer and closer and closer to the throne room, the place where the sovereign reigns. And so utilizing this metaphor of the interior castle, Teresa of Avila named these specific rooms that we would have to journey through, if you will, on the way to meeting the divine in the innermost part of who we are. This is a very embodied spirituality that she was teaching. And it is a spirituality that moves through 7 rooms, not unlike the work that we've discovered in 1896 in the Gospel of Mary, where there are 7 climates or powers that we must confront and the soul must move through in order to be liberated, to be free. And even in some ancient Sumerian myths, ancient Middle Eastern myths of the spiritual path and the shedding that needs to happen in order to stand naked as true self, as true soul, there's this sense that there's the 7 gates that have to be passed. We have to pass through these 7 gates even on the way to being free, being liberated. There are myths and religious stories about that as well. And so here in the 16th century, passionate, fiery Teresa, who she has such a fascinating story. I could share a little bit about Teresa coming from a family where her own ancestors were Jewish. And at that time, in that area of Spain, it was like convert or be expelled or killed. Those were your options. It was a Christian nation, and there was no room for anybody but those who were practicing Christianity at the time. And so her own father, as a young boy, was humiliated with his family because they were found out that they were Jewish people who were keeping the Shabbat. And so for 7 Shabbats, they were paraded around the city as others would berate them and humiliate them and spit upon them. And Teresa's father said, I want nothing to do. He converted to Christianity. He wanted nothing to do with that past that he had. And yet he had that strong ethnicity of being a Jewish man, and Teresa herself having that ethnicity and being raised in the Christian household, but yet having some of that fiery, passionate, like arguing with God, if you will, that was so a part of that rabbinic tradition of like wrestling. The ancient patriarch Jacob himself being changed to the name Israel, which has to do with the one who wrestles with God. And so this sense that the soul that is wrestling and yearning to get a blessing from the divine, and Teresa has that in her own makeup, if you will. She also has some deep wounds from childhood, losing her mother at an early age. And, you know, it's said that Teresa of Avila was like stunningly beautiful. Just imagine like a passion-filled, like burning energy of a beautiful Spanish woman. And she had to be like sent to the convent because her father like was trying to tame her, if you will. She just like exuded sexuality and sensuality, and she had a way of charming everybody. In fact, Teresa herself writes in her autobiography, I mean, it was like she better have found God or she was going to be about some not so life-giving activity in her days. And so she never lost that capacity to like charm an entire room. And she often had men around her little bitty pinky finger, which was so important because as an abbess, as a woman in charge of this monastic community, this convent of sisters, Teresa was able to allow for this way of uniting with God and being in these rapturous experiences with God, with the beloved, without being called by the Inquisition for her way of understanding the path, for her way of understanding and teaching to others. Teaching as a woman of the 16th century, teaching to others this spiritual path to God, which of course in the Roman Catholic Church of the day was completely unheard of. And yet Teresa had a way of, in some ways, denigrating herself as a woman, if you will, and saying like, oh, poor me, woman, what would I know, the one of the weaker sex, and yet knowing very well that she was not a poor me little woman of a weaker sex. She was this full embodiment of passionate, fiery being, and had a strength with her, in her, a strength of character that had a wisdom deeper than most anyone she encountered. And so she was able to keep at bay the inquisitors who came. The inquisitors were those who were seeking to root out heresy. There was some really horrific things happening at this time in the history of Christianity, and so much intolerance and such a tight, confined way of understanding a path to the divine. And it was common that the inquisitors were looking for those who just stepped a little bit out of that box, and then boom. And many of them would not just be expelled from the church, but could also be not just excommunicated, but also executed for what they were teaching and how they were understanding God by their own church, by their own Christian household. This is a very, very gloomy, like I would even say sinful part of Christian history, to be so incredibly exclusionary and to be wielding such authority. It's hard for Americans sometimes to imagine the kind of authority that the church in those days actually had, with church and state being so fused together, Christian church and state being so fused together, and being so incredibly intolerant of many others. And so this is the culture in which Saint Teresa, who is a doctor of the Roman Catholic Church, one of a very few women who are doctors of the Roman Catholic Church, which means that the understanding is not only was she deemed a saint after her life, but also this title of doctor of the church in the Roman Catholic expression of Christianity means that this is somebody who has given a significant teaching, a significant understanding of God to the Roman Catholic communion, if you will. And so to have that honor as well bestowed upon her as a doctor of the church is huge for somebody who's this weak little woman of the 16th century. And remember, she was not at all a weak little woman, and nor do I believe she ever believed of herself that she was a weak little woman. This is a woman of great strength in so many ways, physically and intellectually and emotionally and spiritually. People would come to her to learn, how do I connect with God? How do I even get through the day? And so this beautiful manuscript, this beautiful signposts that Teresa put together for the sisters of her convent, and then for all of the world at this point in the interior castle, gives those who are seeking to unite with the beloved, seeking to unite with God, a bit of a roadmap on what to expect. And she uses that metaphor to the full, that castle to the full, so that there's a sense that there's alligators, there's moats, there's bridges, there's ways you have to move through, like the inner chamber, until you move all the way to this beautiful throne room where the sovereign resides. And it is in that place where the beloveds unite, and there's so much fire and passion released from the beloveds, from the holy, from the divine, and the seeker, the lover seeking the beloved, from them coming together and uniting, and amazing fire, this holy third coming forth. And so there's a way that Teresa knows there are rooms that have to be moved through, parts that have to be put behind us, things that have to be cleared on our way deeper into what I might understand as being deeper into this space of the heart where the holy resides and from which we can live. And so in our pause for peace today, I just want you to get comfortable, learn more about Teresa of Avila, read Interior Castle, or better yet, it's kind of a hard read to do on your own, even when you're reading Myra by Starr's version, her translation of the Interior Castle. It's still a little challenging reading. This is medieval times and medieval theology that's still a part of this. And so it might actually be more helpful to pick up Myra by Starr's little book, Saint Teresa of Avila, Passionate Mystic. Myra has taken some of the best anecdotes and some of the best quotes and some of the best reflections that Saint Teresa of Avila had, not only in Interior Castle, but also in her autobiography and some of her other writings. And she's put them together under themes and chapters, if you will. And you can just read a short few verses and then meditate upon that and begin to understand more of this beautiful teaching from Saint Teresa. Like, she had this amazing sense of a very living relationship with God, with the holy. And she would rail against God sometimes because it literally felt to her as if she had been raised up in these rapturous experiences with God, literally levitating according to her sisters and trying to bring her back down to earth. And yet that's what would happen. There would be this big crash, and it would feel as if her lover had forsaken her, had left her, had abandoned her, and she would pine for God, and she would rail against God. Why do we have this beautiful uniting? And then it's as if you are as far gone from me as any lover could be. And there's a way in which we begin to see this living relationship with God that so many of us truly experience. Probably very few of us live our days with the sense that we are totally united with the holy in that sovereign throne room. More of us may feel as if we have not even yet crossed the moat to get anywhere close to the interior, the most inside place of this castle that we are, and where the holy, where God is, and where we can meet with the divine. So many of us might live as if we are very separate from God. We may not even have a clue that the holy is living within us. That's how isolated and alienated we might be of who God is and who we really are. And so we may even be somebody who's a passionate mystic and has had those experiences of having that sense of being totally one, totally united with God, and then it's gone. We may never feel it again for an entire lifetime, or it may be years between, and we may still be those who are meditating and living by the same practices and principles every day, and yet those moments of pure unification with God can be so fleeting. And what I love about Teresa of Avila is it's she shows us this very real picture of the spiritual journey, this path in which we can feel totally taken up and embraced by God, and this path in which we can feel bereft, alone, abandoned, as if there's no other presence present to us in this entire universe, as if love itself has abandoned us. It's such a real path, and thus can be such an important teaching for us to carry on as we move in and out of these chambers, which is part of what happens. We're not always in any one of these rooms, and we spiral back and forth. So in our meditative experience today, number one, make sure you check out Teresa of Avila's work. But number two, in this meditative experience of today, I want to invite us to move through 7 stages. Now, these are not necessarily the 7 stages of moving through the rooms of the interior castle, or even the gates, if you will. These are 7 stages that I want to guide us through, that so many of us can experience, that can keep us far from uniting with the holy, the divine that lives within us. So if you could get yourself comfortable right now, there's plenty of beautiful space here in this podcast room where I could get myself comfortable, and I'm going to stay right here in front of the camera and get ourselves comfortable, get our feet on the floor, and just take a few deep breaths. We want to begin by setting the intention to unite with God. And we may even have to step back a bit further. Some of us have such wounding experiences and such wounding visions of God, such negative images of who and what God is, that we may not even want to unite with God in any way, shape, or form, because we don't understand that God is love, and that God is the love that is seeking us and yearning for us and longing for us. And so let's set the intention, regardless of what your understanding right now of God is, let's set the intention that this will be a meditative experience to unite with love, as you would unite with your beloved. Let's set that intention, that framework, that God is love itself, and that God is our beloved. Okay. So with that intention in mind and getting ourselves grounded where we are, let's take a deep breath from our belly. We can release it slowly. Maybe one more deep breath from your belly. Release it slowly. I invite you onto the adventure of this path. As we begin it's going to be an action of shedding. So it's beginning by the action of shedding for just a few moments, what we might call our ego. Just a few moments laying down our responsibilities and pausing all activities, all of these things that are a part of what make us us. Ego has to do with the understanding of I. When I say I, it's all the responsibilities and activities. So let's just, for a few moments, release those. And if you're having a difficult time staying with me in these few moments because you have such pressing responsibilities and activities, then let's use a mantra: return to the love that is in me. So I would say, return to the love that is in me. Whenever I'm feeling pulled off, just return to the love that is in me. So I'm moving through this first chamber, if you will. I'm moving through this first gate of releasing the ego, releasing the activities and the responsibilities, and returning to the love that is within me. Even if you don't know that love is at the core of who you are, that is what it is. And so return to the love, or turn to the love, whichever word resonates best for you. Return to the love that is within you. If you get pulled off, if the responsibilities just come flooding in, take another deep breath. And that mantra, return to the love that is in me. Just let the breath and the mantra guide. You may want to literally see yourself moving through rooms, as if moving through rooms in a mansion or in a castle. We've just entered into this castle. We're shedding the ego. We are laying down the responsibilities and activities, and we're going to keep on moving forward to the second gate, the second room, the second threshold, however you want to think about that. And now we are invited to release cultural expectations. This is like how I'm supposed to be, the duties I'm supposed to, like literally the duties that I have. Let's release the cultural expectations in this second chamber on the way to the center point of who we are, to the throne room of the divine, where we will unite with our beloved and reign together. Whatever they are right now, just release the cultural expectations, the duties, the have-tos, lay those down right now. And imagine yourself moving again through another gate, over another threshold, into another room. Let's imagine this is the room of who I'm supposed to be. This is the room of my roles, the roles I'm to play in the world. And so we want to release those on the way to uniting with our beloved. Take that deep breath. Set that intention once again, returning to the love that is within me. Maybe another deep breath, because we're letting go of the roles right now. We're returning to the love that is within. Now imagine yourself moving to another room. And literally you might see this as the spiraling before we get to the center of the castle. So in this next room, we're going to take off our masks, take off our persona, take off the ways that we let others see us. It's like the act that we wear. Take those masks off right now. They might be very similar to your roles. They might be very similar to your cultural expectations, but just take off the masks, the persona that you wear. So the things that show up as clothes in our dreams. We're just going to take off the masks right now that we wear out in the world. How we let others see us. We can be so fused, we can be so stuck in some of these rooms, so fused with our masks that we don't even realize. Our masks, our roles, cultural expectations are not at all who we are. I mean, they're a part of what makes up us, but it's not only who we are. It's not who we truly are. It's not our whole self. They might be necessary for how we live in the world, of course. Yet, this is not who we truly are. This is not the us that we want to bring to this beautiful throne room where we will unite as if like slipping off all of these parts of ourself and slipping off and standing as our naked self before our beloved. Returning to the love who we are so that love and love unite. And I want you to imagine yourself taking a giant step over a threshold right now. And do that with both of your legs, because we are going to move over that threshold through the next gate into the next room. This is the chamber of our failures. These things that distract us from the now, the failures of the past, the mistakes we have made. We're naming those as that, but God's going to work them out and use them for good at some point in time and in some way. But those failures, those things we're ashamed of, those things for which we carry shame, just like they're distracting us from the now. You might have to like literally claw yourself through this room in order to move deeper, deeper, deeper into this castle of who you are. Navigating through the failures, letting them go, clearing a space so that you can move through as a pure being. Let's take another deep breath at this point. And when you exhale it, let it be as if you truly are blowing away any of those mistakes, any of those failures, any of those mess ups, like blow them out, get rid of them. You don't need them. It's getting a little bit harder to move further into the castle at this point. So again, let's in a very intentional way, as if you're alone at home, you can do this in whatever way you want, but like maybe this is the way that you have to be clawing through to get to this next chamber, and this is the chamber of our fears and our anxieties. This is a chamber in which so many of us, a room in which so many of us can get so stuck. Our fears, our anxieties that distract us in another way from the now. They're like thieves of the now. Our fears and our distractions do not allow us to live present now. Our fears and our anxieties keep us from the love that we really are and the love that resides within us. So if you need to move around right now to literally get yourself through, we're going deeper and deeper and deeper into this interior castle. And it can be more difficult to move into these spaces. Take another deep breath. Because if we can move through this room of our fears and our anxieties, these thieves of the now, I want us to imagine a golden gate, a beautiful golden gate. There might be radiance coming forth from it. Perhaps you're hearing beautiful music as you move closer to this radiant gate, this threshold. I don't want you to see it as a door. I don't want you to see a door there. It's just a threshold. It's a gate, if you will. It's something you're moving through, but it's not a door. Let's not have a door there. On our way to this interior chamber, this beautiful throne room, you might even envision it as pure gold, unalloyed gold. It is one thing. And this is where your beloved awaits. Take a deep breath. Summon courage. Notice the desire rising in you to pass through this golden gate and move into this brilliance, this radiance of pure love. If you need to anthropomorphize this pure love, if you need to see your beloved as if your beloved is like another human being, then go for it, but know that this is not a human being that you know in waking world, if you will. This is the beloved that is pure love, that is God, that is the divine. And so we awaken that desire to move through into this brilliance. And it is as if the light that we are and that resides within us unites with the light here in this beautiful chamber, this interior, innermost chamber of our castle of who we are. And it is in this place I want us to rest for just a few moments. You might even see yourself laying down with the beloved, embracing the beloved now, being held by the beloved and holding the beloved, gazing upon the beloved, and allowing the beloved, your beloved, to gaze upon you. Let pure love look into your eyes, searching for the brilliance of who you are. And so in these moments, we rest in this beautiful embrace. If you're pulled off from these moments, then take another deep breath and use that mantra once again. Set that intention to return to the love that is within you. Return to this beautiful embrace. Love, embracing love. The love who you are, embracing the love that is God. All of who you are. Body, mind, soul, heart, all of who you are, embraced by God, by pure love. Let's take one more deep breath. Release it slowly. And I want you to notice what is happening in you, in your system, in your being, in your physical being, in your spiritual being, in your emotional being, your mental being right now. Notice what is happening, what you're experiencing in these moments of being in the embrace of pure love. Because we want to imprint this embrace in our system so that it will continue to guide us on a cellular level, even to living this experience, this experience in which I hope we have been able to feel united, if even for a moment. Even if we didn't quite get to the unification with the divine, hopefully we at least felt that longing for the divine and perhaps beginning to feel the desire the divine has for you as well. And so I want us to imprint this experience. Note if your heart is racing or not. Note if you feel like a little newborn being held, like nothing, like no challenges or traumas of life have touched you. We've moved through all of that on our way to the interior castle. No names you've ever been called. No ways you've ever been torn down, exteriorly or even from within. None of that's here in this place of beautiful peace, in this place where you're united fully with love. So we're going to take another deep breath and release. And another deep breath and release. And another deep breath and release. And another deep breath and release. If you're starting to feel lightheaded, I want you to tap your heels into the floor, get yourself back grounded in the now, and take another deep breath. And release. One more deep breath. And release. And we'll have one more deep breath. And release. And as you release, if you want to wiggle your fingers and your toes, wake up your system once again. And when you're ready, just returning to your normal breathing pattern. When you're ready, if you will, open your eyes, looking out from the the center of your being from the center of love. And if we could carry with us into the rest of this day, the rest of this night, the rest of this week, if we could carry with us this experience of looking out through the eyes of love and moving into the world as we look through the eyes of love, maybe the eyes of our beloved, able to now look through us, the eyes of God literally able to see all around us, the beauty, the joy, the love, the goodness that is all around us, the abundance that is all around us, the security that is all around us because of love, which never leaves. Even though we might get pulled off from it, love never leaves. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Pause for Peace, and we'll see what comes as my weeks of this class with James Finley through Center for Action and Contemplation on Interior Castle by Teresa of Avila. We'll see what comes. Perhaps there'll be a few more learnings from it. And if you would like to continue to be about this practice, I hope it has resonated with you. You can come back to this Pause for Peace again and again and again, or you could make a list of your own 7 chambers that you find it difficult to get through. Some of us might even have like addictions in there, or some of us might have significant traumas in there, significant wounding. Maybe we have depression, loss, whatever it might be. You can make your own list of the chambers that you have to move through, the rooms that you have to go through, the gates through which you must pass in order to come to the beautiful throne room of your interior castle. You might even think of that, the beautiful throne room of your heart, where the divine dwells with you. Have a beautiful week, dear ones, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Pause for Peace. Blessings.